Well, we welcome you this morning. It's nice to have everybody with us, and we look forward to hopefully having a informative webinar here this morning and help you understand a little bit more about cloud computing and from the aspect of TAZ Networks, what that involves as well. So first off, just to let you know a little bit about me, Tavis Patterson here, President of TAZ Networks. And good to have everybody with us here. So we just want to let everybody know a little bit about hearing about us and what we do here at TAZ Networks. Let me just make sure I'm seeing some things on the box here. Hopefully Kevin can hear us. Just double checking, making sure that everybody can hear us okay. All right, we're going to proceed just to hopefully make sure that everybody can hear, and we'll check that out. So just appreciate you joining us today. This is definitely something that we're going to try to do more often every month, have a little webinar for everybody to continue to definitely educate and help others know about new technology. And so just a little bit about myself. Obviously, I'm the owner here at TAZ Networks. Have a network engineer background, and so I've worked with networks large and small. But specifically when it comes to cloud computing, obviously that's a new technology that has popped up really in the last 4 or 5 years for the mass. And so we've done quite a bit with cloud technology, including version 2.0 of our TAZ cloud infrastructure that is out now. And so we really have refined that, and we feel that we have a good basis for folks to migrate to and work very well with. So definitely, it's something that I think brings a lot of benefit to folks, and they'll definitely enjoy. So hopefully, we'll kind of go into that a little bit more. But if you have any questions on that, please feel free. So let's begin a little bit. What is the cloud? Well, in a broad term, shared computing resources and shifting. The workload is really something that has become more and more used over the last several years. And so as we see that, shared computing resources and shifting the workload is very similar to almost like electrical power lines. You think about it, 100 years ago, every company made their own power because there were no electrical lines. And so suddenly this new electrical grid came up, and companies realized it was cheaper to plug into the grid than to build their own power producing areas or mills or whatever the case was. So they tapped into this. It was much cheaper, worked out very well. And that's very similar to what we're seeing with the internet now. And so it's something that all of us can kind of think back and see over the years how the internet has gotten better and better and connected globally to everyone. If you kind of want to read a little bit about maybe the big switch, here is a book from Nicholas Carr, very interesting, where he compares that power producing of Edison now to things such as Google and how we're all connected and really how it's changed. How he walked into a big data center with just a bunch of faceless computers and realized that people were running their workloads from these big data centers that were all internet connected rather than having to worry about computers in their own. So it's really a switch that has changed and taken over, frankly, from the IT space, and all of us are getting our heads around it. It's changing every day, and you're seeing more and more cloud computing companies really coming along, but it is something to behold. Well, technology continues to evolve for us, and so even from the first iPad, now we have the iPhone 10. I hate to show how old I am with Windows NT and Windows 3.1, but I remember the computers that look like this, and now we have, for instance, these new Lenovo X1 Carbon ThinkPads that are just amazing. They're so light and delicate to the touch, but they're powerhouses. And so technology continues to really get better and better every year, and obviously as it should. So that's something that all of us can appreciate, and the cloud is just the next step in that. So we're going to talk a little bit about some things with cloud computing. What is it? Can I really access my information from anywhere? How does the cloud help with disaster recovery, for instance? What does the cloud cost? We'll have some things on that, and then maybe some benefits, potential problems that you might have, and is it right for my business? Those are all different things that we definitely can think about and answer. And so we want to try to bring those answers to you. Now, Heather is on our messages, and so she's going to speak up when there's questions. So feel free to ask any questions that you have as I go through this as well, and we'll make this interactive. Happy to make sure that they answer these things. So what is cloud computing? Well, when we say cloud, we simply mean internet connected data. Think about it. It's data that lives on the end of an internet connection somewhere. And typically it refers to using cloud computing resources or computing resources, whether that be disk space or processors, physical servers, virtual servers, whatever the case is, somewhere located other than your office and accessed through the internet. And typically these are housed at huge data centers to consolidate costs. These data centers are amazing to walk in. I've toured several. They have tremendous security protocols. They have redundant power, 10 types of fiber connections for internet. Just amazing things that, the typical person, obviously, us as a small business owner, we can never afford all these things, but when you consolidate and put a bunch of companies in, now we can appreciate the consolidated resources and both the savings that we get out of that and the redundancy that we get out of that. And so it really has caused cloud computing to just escalate. Now, to go along with that is our connections, right? So gone are the days of DSL to our homes, the old AOL dial-up, things like that. So, you see Comcast, for instance, in our area, or Xfinity as you want to call it, they've changed to where they're giving bandwidth upgrades away for free. So for instance, recently at my home, I just got a notice to upgrade to 150 meg pipe for free. I just had to reset my modem. Those things were unfathomable before, and so it's caused us to really consume the internet as a utility. We talked about electrical before. It's like that, right? In fact, I think if you ask my teenage kids, they would rather the electric go down than the internet go down. And I think all of us have started to connect to that. So we're consuming things in different ways. And the interesting thing is that we're using cloud computing, and we have used cloud computing for quite a while. Are you using it now? Well, quite possibly you are. Maybe you have Office 365, or maybe you've gone on YouTube. you've done Google Apps, you know, different things. You've got a backup service for your home computers. Those are all cloud resources. And so, you know, a lot of people have been using it more so for personal resources way sooner than business resources. And so now we see that business is catching up to some of these personal items as well. Well, what's one of the biggest users of cloud computing that shows what's different, right? Well, what has happened is that cloud computing is causing us to consume items quicker and differently. And so an example is movies, right? And entertainment. You know, to start off with, it used to be that we used to have just movie theaters. And if you wanted to see a movie, you had to go to the movie theater. There was no other option. It was kind of the Friday night and Saturday night place to go, right? But then Blockbuster kind of came into vogue, right? And so, you know, you could go down to your Blockbuster and you could get, you know, DVDs or VHS tapes earlier and consume it that way if you wanted, if you know, didn't want to go to a movie theater. So that was the next evolution of technology, right? But now Netflix has just taken over, and you know, others are trying to do the same thing, right? Even consuming TV through the internet, right? YouTube has a TV service that you can get, and different TV services that are not cable connected, right, any longer. So you need an internet and you consume this. And it's interesting that Netflix entirely uses cloud computing resources to deliver that. And they use the Amazon platform, believe it or not, to deliver that to you. So when you think about it, you see you're probably using a lot more cloud resources than you ever even realized. And so as a result of that, now clients are really thinking about the value of cloud computing and what we can do with cloud computing. The old model was that we would set up a PC. It was set up for a specific user. You brought that out. You set up the new user on it. The PC is there and they use it, right? And maybe that person went away as a business owner. Things happen. We reset the PC up for a new user. Well, in the new model of cloud computing, devices really are no longer relevant. It doesn't matter what device you use to connect to cloud computing resources. You can consume your IT really on any device that you want, wherever and whenever you want. And so it makes it really easy for us to go out and work from anywhere for folks, to have salespeople work from anywhere, really just amazingly connect and get the same experience across different devices. And that is really something that has progressed in this world. And if you think about it, the folks, the young folks that are coming in to the workforce now, this is what they expect, right? They're used to using social media and everything on their device, to having access to it all the time. The 8-to-5 business model is definitely going away. And so folks may work late in the evening, you know, at home, early, and they really consume technology differently than ever before. So a good question for all of us is, you know, what goes in the cloud? Well, really, the short answer is everything can go in the cloud now. That may sound a little scary, but it's a simple fact that we want to have things out there and make sure that it's accessible. There's no reason to move to the cloud if you're not going to just make sure everything is accessible and you just decide to do a little bit, because that doesn't really benefit anyone. You place restrictions on your users, which obviously makes it frustrating for them. So, you know, our videos, our applications, our email, devices out there can all be put into the cloud. And so it's something that we really are working on migration strategies and helping our clients to realize that they can put everything in the cloud and do so effectively. So the big thing and the big change from a business owner perspective is probably the thinking of Capex versus OpEx, right? And how cloud technology is consumed. So technology is being consumed differently, and because of that, we're paying for it in an OpEx fashion with cloud computing. Capital expenditures are starting to be replaced by monthly operating expenses, and you're seeing that in all technology really is how folks are changing to this model, and really it's the vendors that are pushing this. The reason they're doing that is because technology changes so quickly, and they really want you to continue to upgrade and keep relevant, because it's hard for them to have you working with technology that's 10 years old. Microsoft has tried to do it for so long, and even they are starting to change and really give and push operating system updates out to their folks really automatically, because they want to keep them up to date, they want to keep them secure. A great example is our cell phone, right? If you have a phone from 3 years ago, you can raise your hand, right? Because most of us don't, right? And kudos to you if you do, but typically we bundle it in, or we get the free upgrades, or however your phone plan is. But it is really hard to walk around with technology that is 3 years old from a cell phone provider. They have gotten us into this understanding to upgrade every 1 to 2 years now to get that new technology and the benefits that come with it. And we pay a monthly fee for that. Well, cloud computing is very similar, right? Instead of waiting for a good year and spending that money on CapEx expenditures, now we're moving to operating expense and saying, okay, what is the monthly cost per employee for IT? And as a result, then we can budget for new employees when they come in for IT. So for instance, if I have a new employee, I know that I'm going to be spending $100 a month, for example, on IT. So that person needs to be producing right away, and we'll increase that. The nice thing is that with a CapEx model, we don't buy for 75 users. And maybe our budget or our plan, our business plan, was to get to 75, but we know how that goes sometimes. Maybe we only have 60 employees. Sales weren't as good for the year as we thought. Well, instead of really over buying and budgeting wrong for that CapEx, now we can just incrementally increase our IT spend per employee. And that helps out a lot, especially small business. It is tremendous to think about the benefits of doing that and just increasing that spend as you grow, rather than overbuying something that may be not used near as effectively. So what's something that we can keep in mind when it comes to cloud computing? What do you need? Well, you definitely need a big high-speed internet, and we say perhaps even 2. So that would be effectively 1 big pipe. What we're seeing most of our clients use is a cable connection that has a minimum of 100 meg connection. That has worked fine for most of our folks, and we're not seeing any issues with folks that use that. You can go to 2 and have those roll over. Maybe you have a backup connection. For some of our folks, they have a fiber connection, which gives consistent, very, very high speed, and then maybe a cable connection as a backup. And then through the firewall, they can make sure that they have a constant connection to the internet because obviously if the internet is cut, then your productivity locally is cut. But the benefit of cloud computing, you can go somewhere else, right? Send your folks home. They can work from home if they have internet, coffee shop, whatever the case is. They can get back on their resources. And then your devices, definitely a couple of devices. We're seeing folks with 3, 4, 5 devices now. That is not unusual, right? And so I think about what I have. I have a phone. I carry my iPad with me wherever I go. I have a laptop when I need to do maybe some more mobile, heavier work with a keyboard. And then I have, in the office here, my big desktop with 2 big screens, which I would never want to give up. So, 4 or 5 devices is normal, and being able to access all my resources from all of those devices is something that all of us want to really work at and make it easy for folks to use. Well, let me step in here and just see, Heather, any questions up to this point?
Not at this time.
Okay, we'll keep going. If you find something that you've got a question on, folks, please just make sure that you put your question in there, and we'll have Heather give it to me, and we'll try to answer it the best we can. So one of the things that folks are worried about is the migration process, right? And the migration process for going from on-site to cloud can seem like this, right? The Home Alone scenario, where it can be very scary thinking about migrating and taking everything from local resources into the cloud. One, it can be scary from the fact of doing that and the security aspect, and 2, the aspect really of the actual process itself. How long will I be down? How much work is involved? We definitely can say that there is a fair amount of work to migrate folks, but it's no different than an old server migration project that we would do, right? So we would migrate folks and do that. The nice thing is that, for instance, in email, we would migrate email for business customers, maybe every 3 or 4 years when they get a new server, and we'd have to do that, buy the licenses, do it again every 3 to 4 years. When you migrate to Office 365, for instance, which is our recommended cloud infrastructure for email, you do it one time. And then you get all the benefits of all the upgrades and everything that come from Microsoft and Office 365. And so that's done one time. It's moved. We have a migration process that actually synchronizes all of your emails from your local to the remote Office 365 servers, and there's 0 downtime when it comes to that. There's a cutover, and we just redirect email from local to Microsoft, and your folks, for the most part, they'll realize a little bit of change, but for the most part, they use Outlook the same way they did. Everything is just a different connection place, and it works out really well. The same is true with migrating servers. We migrate servers, we actually can take a backup and then restore it off hours. We synchronize the data and make a cutover date and then redirect folks to those resources remotely. So we really try to limit downtime to anything, and we've got a great migration process and team now that is doing that. And so every time, as you would expect, we've learned something, and we polish that process and make sure that you get a really great service to make sure you're not down at all. So it really takes away the Home Alone fear and get you in a great position to get up and started, because we want it to be a great experience for the user. If we start out in a bad way right from the beginning, they're going to think bad right from the beginning, and so we definitely don't want that at all. Another thing to keep in mind with our cloud computing and cloud computing in general is disasters, disaster recovery, and how that works. And so here's an example of a tornado that hit Dexter back in 2012, just leveled a place. Michigan, no doubt, we have fewer disasters than a lot of places, but it does happen. And so we want to mitigate that as much as possible. And cloud computing really does that. The data centers that run, they have redundant power. They have generator power in the event that something happens. So you can move, and really, if your office is leveled, folks can quickly keep going in their business. The data centers that we use right now, one is located in Texas and one is located in Las Vegas. And the reasons are that they're far away from Michigan. If a disaster happens here, then it's very easy to move somewhere and handle those things. They're in two separate locations. And as in anything, backups are important as well. So even in our cloud computing environment, we make sure to have backups because you just can't rely on just one thing, right? So we don't want to just rely on one data center, but we want to make sure that we have a backup of all your data as well, so that in the event that there is a huge catastrophe of multiple cities or multiple areas, then we make sure we have your data, because obviously, as all of us know as business owners, business data is the life of our business. So it really helps when it comes to disasters. So always keep that in mind, that's a huge benefit of cloud computing, resting easy at night and making sure that your data is safe somewhere else. Here's an example of some costing, and it's not all inclusive, but it gives you an idea that there are some savings to be had with cloud computing. And typically we see cloud computing really about equal or a little less than going out in a Capex installation process. Folks think that you can get the cost of cloud computing down to nothing. And really, that's not the case, especially for the business side of things. You may be used to a Google Photos account or something where they give you that for free. They're giving you that for free from a personal level to get your information, and really they have the billions of dollars to do it. From the business side of things, that's where they're making their money. And in the cloud computing space, you really pay monthly for the size of servers and what you use. So the larger the servers, then you pay for more. The biggest use of money in cloud computing is the disk space. So as you continue to add disk space and as you continue to add storage space, your monthly cost goes up. And that's really the biggest driver of that. So we know that gets cheaper over time as technology is able to handle more. But right now, that is still the number one cost we're seeing for clients, is the disk space that they consume. So for instance, if you're a 10 user or 20 user company, but you consume 10 times the data of maybe a 50 user little manufacturing firm, you're going to have 10 or 20 times the cost of cloud computing in disk space. So it's hard to really say, this is exactly what every business would use, because it really does vary wildly from business to business based on what they use. But overall, we try to give a set monthly fee and make sure that we're within that budget for everyone for the upcoming year. Now, just the costs here that we have too is going through and making sure that you understand all these things. One of the additional cloud computing factors that you want to keep in mind is that there are additional things that save money, right? And this may be a little bit in some folks' case, or it may be a lot. So for instance, there is less power, right? So you're not using all the power of servers in your storage area, in your business area, wherever you have, and that can be quite a bit. There's less cooling needs. So for instance, when you think about cooling, you're really continually making sure that those servers are not affecting your business area when it comes to high temp, because they put out so much, of really the air conditioning, that is done. So when you think about it, that's one of the biggest needs of a data center is the power and the cooling needs, because you've got all these servers and you're trying to cool them. And so by sharing the resources, it's definitely something that, they take on that responsibility of doing it, and they have better, systems and more efficient systems coming out all the time to get that. Less insurance is needed, so you don't have to itemize a server locally. So there might be some cloud computing insurance, might be a special thing, but definitely there is less physical insurance needed locally. You gain some office space, so we know a lot of folks that have maybe a whole room dedicated to servers, their switches, that you can gain that entire office back. So it might be beneficial to think about that. And probably the biggest thing for us is virtually zero downtime. That's been our experience. Since we've moved to version 2.0 of our TAZ cloud infrastructure, we've had no downtime in the data center. And that really has been tremendous. When we think about even email, we have moved lots of clients over to Office 365. And I know Office 365 got a bad rap initially, but in the last, I would say, 2 years, we have not seen one downtime experience with Office 365. So between the servers and between Office 365, we've had zero downtime. Now there's been some maintenance things that they've done, so that's why I say virtually zero downtime. 99.9%, right? Those 5 nines of reliance. And obviously time is money when it comes to that. So it's really something that helps tremendously. And the SMB really just can't spend the money to get virtually zero downtime. That's the problem, right? To create a zero downtime environment for most of our clients, they would be spending 10 times what they do now. And here it's built into the cloud computing environment. So that's really something that they have to consider, even if it's the same cost as to what they're spending now in a Capex fashion. They have to consider the benefits of doing that, right? And I'm not saying that cloud computing is for everybody, but it is a big driver for a lot of our folks to think about that and not worry about email going down or their servers going down. Well, the big thing that everybody asks about is security really an issue in the cloud? That's the number one question, right, that we get is security. And, is it secure? What do we have issues, right? If you've been watching the news this week, you've probably seen Facebook, right? And some of the things that people are worried about data. Well, here's the thing. It's an issue with any technology. I don't care if it's cloud computing. I don't care if it's on-site, your firewall, whatever the case is. Security is always an issue and should always be first and foremost for any IT provider. But in my experience, and here's, we're going on 5 to 6 years of our own TAZ cloud infrastructure where we've set up for clients. And then also going back farther, cloud computing is actually more secure than any technology that we've used previously. Well, an example here is Microsoft's research, what they've found. Time savings here, for instance. 32% of U.S. companies say they spend less time worrying about cyber attacks because they're in the cloud. SMBs that use the cloud are 6 times more likely to have decreased the amount of spend on security as those not using the cloud. And that can come from labor. It can come from actual resources. That's obviously for Microsoft Research. They have a lot. That's who we use for some things is Microsoft. And so you might say, well, they might be slanted in certain things. Yeah, they could be. But from our experience, and I will tell you that we are less reliant on Microsoft products than ever before. But they spend billions of dollars on security in their cloud. Amazon does the same. Google does the same. And so, a typical SMB owner, you can't do that. You just can't. And so that's really why we've migrated a lot of folks to these types of infrastructures. When we started TAZ Cloud version 1, we did it internally with our own data sets and our own, mini data center. Quickly, I found out that as a small business owner, I just couldn't keep up. There's just no way. I don't have big enough and deep enough pockets. So we moved over to these data centers and other vendors such as Microsoft and others to house our information because they spend billions of dollars on this security. They're watching it constantly. They're updating us. They're letting us know. We've not seen security be an issue. And especially if you set it up in the right way, if you keep companies separate from connecting, they can't see one another, right? You make sure that you have a secure VPN. You make sure that you continue to patch and update and have virus and backups. All the same things in the cloud apply as they would if you had bought a local server. But by doing this now, you see, now we've taken that out of the infrastructure, we've put it in a cloud, and we're doing the same security practices we always have done, monitoring and maintaining firewalls, and we see that it's better security and better uptime, better reliability. So we just haven't seen an issue in the cloud like many people might think there has been. So we just want to give an overview maybe of what a cloud infrastructure looks like quickly. And it's really, when you think about it, just a simple connection. Here we have a cloud user, that's a host. Think of this as your business. You have a router and you have that network cloud, right? The network internet that connects to the cloud service provider. And what we do, for instance, I'll give you just my own use of TAZ Networks. For TAZ Networks, the business, we are 100% cloud now. We made that decision about a year ago, and we actually have moved our servers to the cloud. We have moved our email to Office 365. Our phone systems, when you call in for support to TAZ Networks, that's a cloud-hosted PBX in our data center now. So everything is cloud. The benefits of that are that, for instance, I had a disaster recovery day in December during the holiday break time. And I made all my folks stay home, and they worked from home, and we were able to support our clients from home just to test. And they came back and said, maybe this didn't work quite right, or we had to adjust this. But we got that experience, and we were able to operate the very next day. They had no idea that day was coming, and I told them to stay home tomorrow. And so that's what happened. So really, we have our business here. We have a connection, a cable connection that I think is 100 or 125 meg with the router, connects over to the data center. And we have a consistent VPN that's connected, so I can open up a file explorer, I can click to my map drives, and the experience is very similar to having servers on site. In fact, as a business owner, I really don't see any difference. So typically in the data center, we'll set up 2 servers, virtual servers for our clients. One is a domain controller that you folks are probably used to hearing about, that has your files on it, that allows your login to your computers. It's your security brain. And then we also have a remote desktop server where we can remotely log in and get a virtual desktop. And we run, for instance, our QuickBooks from that. And I get the same experience from home or wherever as I do here in the office. And I have no lag. It works very well. And I'm just able to access it all the time. So that's typically what it looks like for our clients, depending on the size of those couple virtual servers, are really what you're spending monthly for the cloud infrastructure. And again, it's dependent very much so on the size of the servers and the disk space that you consume in front of that. So really varies from client to client, but the overall premise is the same. And so it's excellent for all of our folks to think about. So that's really the setup. Just one last thing that I want to give to all of our folks on the line. We appreciate you being here today. And so if you are interested in a cloud readiness assessment, we've done this in the past and we've charged $597 for this for folks who call us up and say, hey, we're interested in a TAZ cloud infrastructure. What does that mean? We'll send somebody on site and do a couple hour, 2 or 3 hour assessment of everything. We'll review the current network. We'll determine your internet speed connectivity. Do you need to increase that before you ever think about moving to the cloud? We determine if cloud is right for you. Some folks it's not right for, and it won't be right for a long time until maybe we get even higher internet speeds. And the reason for that is the data that they consume. It may just not make it. So we'll give you, the brutal facts on that, a timeline to migrate, how long it would be, and definitely help you out in understanding more of that. We'll have our consultant come on site and do that for you, and then an account manager will follow up. So this is good for today until 5 p.m. and just send me an email with the subject cloud assessment. We'll definitely be happy to do that for you. So we appreciate you joining us today, and definitely cloud computing is an exciting time. It's something that we're seeing more and more folks move to, and it's something that we want to continue to help folks really understand and appreciate the benefits and even the drawbacks if we feel there's drawbacks to it for a client. We're totally open about that. We want to help them definitely, to appreciate that fact as well. So we'll ask, if you have any questions, definitely bring those up now and be happy to try to answer them and see if I have any questions to that. Heather, we have any questions so far?
Yes, we do, actually. Pam is wondering how we determine internet speed connectivity when they have remote users. She says, can we assume that remote workers and home workers have adequate speed since they're already connecting now to the in-house servers? Or how do we determine that?
Yeah, good question. So definitely we can do an informal survey for remote users. Here's our typical response, is that if they have a cable connection, they're very good. If they're in an old DSL connection, no, they're probably not a good candidate for using remote cloud resources. Anything that is 25 meg and up, and most of our Comcast, Xfinity, WOW connections are probably 50 meg and up now. They are a fine candidate for cloud computing. So we'll do that. remote resource, interview with folks and just see if everybody's on board with that. And a general rule, yes, it's very good. A general rule is if they can, connect to in-house resources now through their SSL VPN, they'll be just fine when it comes to VPN and cloud resources in the future. Shouldn't be an issue whatsoever for them. Yeah, good question.
And that's all the questions I have right now.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're going to have this, we are recording this, and Heather will follow up with folks, making sure that they get that and the slide deck as well. I'm sure you'll want to pour through that. If you have any questions in the future, please let any of my staff or myself know, and we're happy to help and really answer any questions that you might have. Thanks a lot and enjoy the day. Take care.